I, 32 male, have spent the last 7 years building a life I thought was a partnership, only to realize I was essentially a human ATM with a pulse. I'm a senior software architect, which basically means I trade my sanity and 80-hour work weeks for a paycheck that, until recently, I barely saw. My wife, 30 female, and I were married for 5 years. When we started out, she was a hardworking marketing pro. A year into the marriage, she claimed burnout and wanted to pivot to interior design. Being the supportive husband, I said go for it. I paid for the masterclasses, the expensive MacBook Pro, the high-end software, and every networking gala she wanted to attend. Fast forward 4 years. She hadn't taken on a single paying client. Not one. But if you looked at her house or her Instagram, you'd think she was Qley Wersler. She lived a life of quiet luxury, entirely funded by my loud, stressful corporate grind. It started small, organic artisanal groceries and $100 yoga leggings. Then it snowballed into her renovating our house every 6 months with furniture that cost more than my first car. I never complained because I thought making her happy was my job. I didn't realize I was just a background character in her fantasy of being a mogul. About 3 months ago, the vibe shifted. She got cold. If I asked what she did all day, I was suffocating her. If I mentioned our savings were cratering despite my raises, I was controlling. The breaking point was a random Tuesday. I'd just finished a brutal 14-hour shift pushing a major code release. I walked in to find her and her mother, 55 female, sipping $80 wine, surrounded by designer shopping bags. I asked if we really needed more clothes when the mortgage was due, and she hadn't put a cent into the joint account in months. She didn't even look at me. Her mother just huffed and said I was being clinical and ruining the mood. My wife stood up, looked at me with pure disgust, and said, "This is why everything is falling apart. You're a small-minded bean counter. You provide the house, but you suck the soul out of it. You're the problem. You're the reason I'm unhappy. Figure it out." Then she walked upstairs, leaving me in a room full of stuff I paid for, but wasn't allowed to enjoy. I sat there for an hour in the dark. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just realized she was right. I was the problem, because I was the one enabling this. Problem solved, I whispered. I packed a suitcase and my laptop. I took the deed to the house, which is crucial. I bought that house 2 years before I even met her using an inheritance. In my state, premarital property is separate as long as you don't commingle it. I'd been meticulous, paying the mortgage and taxes solely from an account that held only my premarital funds and my salary. I checked into a hotel, and the next morning I went to the bank. I didn't drain the joint account, that looks bad to a judge, but I took exactly 50%, about $4,000. Then I changed my direct deposit. My 6-figure salary was officially disconnected from her Apple Pay. I filed for divorce that afternoon. The first sign of her world collapsing came 48 hours later. My phone was a war zone of voicemails. At first, she was just annoyed. "Why is the credit card declined? Fix it." 3 hours later, she was frantic. "The Tesla won't start. It says remote access is revoked. I'm at the gym. Come get me." She didn't get it. I hadn't cut her off illegally. I just stopped subsidizing her luxury. There was still $4,000 in the joint account. For a normal person, that's plenty for a month of groceries. For her, that wouldn't cover a single revitalizing facial and a pair of shoes. My lawyer, a total shark, loved the "you're the problem" speech. He told me that since she stated she was done, I was simply removing the problem myself. Friday morning, I checked my doorbell camera. A delivery truck arrived with a $4,500 velvet sofa she'd ordered. I watched her come to the door in a silk robe, trying to explain to the driver why the card was declined. "My husband is having a mental breakdown. Just leave it." The driver didn't care. They loaded the sofa back up and drove off. She looked right at the camera and screamed, "I hate you. You're pathetic. My lawyer will take everything." Then the dirty trick started. Her mother called me, screaming that I was financially abusing her daughter. I told her the process server was on the way with an eviction notice for her. She was an unauthorized occupant, and divorce papers for my wife. Then I got a credit alert. My wife tried to open 3 new credit cards in my name and apply for a home equity loan. I froze my credit instantly. This wasn't just a messy breakup anymore, it was identity theft. But the real kicker came from a private investigator I'd hired. Turns out I wasn't the problem because I was a bean counter. I was the problem because I was the obstacle between her and the guy she'd been seeing for 6 months. She was using my money to pay for a studio apartment for some failed musician downtown. Every designer bag she bought was actually a cash withdrawal or a loan to this guy. She'd spent nearly $45,000 of our money on him. I went to the house with a police escort to get the rest of my stuff. She charged at me, screaming about her rights. I just looked at her and said, "Does your boyfriend know his rent is overdue? Because the bank account is dry." She went pale. Her mother tried to pivot, saying they'd claim I gaslit her into quitting her job. I just laughed. I had every receipt for every class and business expense I'd funded for 4 years while she did zero work. They tried to get a restraining order against me, claiming I was starving them. I showed the judge the bank statements for $1,000 in the joint account and her $2,000 shopping spree the day after I left. The judge basically told her that being cut off from a lifestyle you can't afford isn't abuse, it's reality. Denied. Then she got desperate. She tried to sell my vintage watch collection and some high-end electronics to a pawn shop. Since those were my separate property, I filed a police report. The cops caught her loading my 75-inch TV into a U-Haul at 10 p.m. She screamed it was marital property, but the serial numbers matched my stolen property report. She wasn't arrested, but she was now a documented thief in the divorce file. The finale was the best part. They thought they could squat in the house for months while I paid the mortgage. What they didn't realize is that since it was my separate property, I didn't need her permission to sell it. I sold the house to a corporate real estate trust, RIT, for an all-cash, 10-day closing. A multi-billion-dollar corporation doesn't care about your feelings. The day the sheriff arrived to execute the writ of possession was glorious. I stood across the street and watched. They didn't knock twice. My wife and her mother were escorted out with nothing but the clothes on their backs and 1 suitcase. All her designer furniture was hauled onto the lawn by movers while it started to rain. She ran at me on the sidewalk, screaming that I'd ruined her life. I didn't ruin it, I told her. I just stopped paying for it. You said I was the problem, so I solved it. You're free now. Go be happy. In court, the judge was brutal. Because of the dissipation of assets, the money she spent on the boyfriend, and her fraud attempts, she got 0 alimony. She walked away with her clothes, her jewelry, and a massive bill for my legal fees because of her bad faith litigation. As we left, she actually tried to ask if we could just talk. I told her to go talk to her musician boyfriend, who, shocker, had blocked her number the second the money stopped flowing. I'm finally living in a place that's soulful because she's not in it. I lost a lot of money, but I gained my life back. Turns out, being the problem was the best thing that ever happened to me. If you enjoyed watching this problem solve itself, feel free to subscribe. Unlike my ex-wife, this content won't cost you a designer sofa and your dignity.